We've got two really good speakers on stage. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, just say who they work for, where they come from, then we'll crack into the topics. Maybe I'll start on my left. We've got Richard Berkemeier.
Testing. I want to disclose right away that I put my watch, took it off and put it in the room. I don't want Al criticizing my choice of watches. I'm with Pegasus Aircraft Appraisal Group, based in Rhode Island. Do a lot of helicopter, corporate jets, engines, parts, simulators, and the like. I've spent a fair amount of time here in the kingdom because I did some work with Takim, which is the Saudi teaching authority. I thought it was interesting what Per had to say about how vibrant it is. So my last time here was maybe 3 years ago. Now the tube or subway system is running. You can get to the airport. It's quite useful. So it's quite a vibrant place.
Thanks, Richard. Youcef.
Cheers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May all the peace and blessings be upon you all. Just as a disclaimer, I do have a stutter. I'm working very hard to overcome a stutter. So if I do block, please be a bit patient with me. So just as an introduction, my name is Youcef Berour Minarro, and I am a principal valuations analyst and an ISTAT certified appraiser with Cirium Ascent Consultancy. So ISTAT, for those that don't know, is the International Society of Transport Aircraft Trading. And I've been an aircraft appraiser for over 10 years now, and I specialize in commercial aircraft valuations and for business aviation as well. We help and support our clients on their transactions. So if it's aircraft lessors, aircraft lenders, investors who are interested in understanding what the aircraft value is. So we use our data to help you drive your decisions and to minimize your risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Youcef. Thank you, Richard. I should just add that Richard is an ASA senior certified appraiser. So we have representatives of both churches, both mosques, what do you say here, covered from an appraisal point of view. Wanted to start off just with a very basic level, picking up on, I think it was the first session of this morning where we talked about the importance of due diligence. Pre-purchase inspections was the topic on the first panel. I think going hand in hand with that, and certainly something we'd offer at IBA, we would offer PPIs, but often with that we would offer an appraisal, maybe based on an inspection. I'd like to ask the panel, why should I get my aircraft appraised? Maybe Richard, what's the benefit? Why should you get a certified appraisal?
I'm not sure that the term certified accredited appraisal, but the advantage is if it's a bank, if it's an insurance company, that it gives an opinion of value and something that credit departments can look at. If it's an airline, bank loans, so it's for various sources. So it's quite a value added, and it ties the number to sort of the data in the marketplace. So.
Okay, and maybe following up on that, Youcef, there's clearly a use. If you're buying an aircraft, you want to know how much to pay, and we would serve a purpose in helping you set value. When else might you use it? I'm thinking perhaps regulatory reasons, but what other sort of appraisals might you see yourself conducting?
Sure. I mean, so an aircraft appraisal is it's used obviously if you're trying to buy, if you're trying to sell, but it's a lot more deeper than that. So if, say, for example, you have a litigation case in court, you have an aircraft incident, so an aircraft has an aircraft has been damaged,
Yep.
and all of a sudden now you have the owner and you have the person or the entity who has caused that damage. They are in a dispute now, and they have to understand, okay, like how much is the aircraft worth now as a result of the incident, and I think especially for business aviation,
Yep.
it's a very important thing. If you come down the whole path of it's been hit by something or it's had an incident, you have to take it a little bit more kind of serious.
Is that because it's maybe more emotive when it comes to business jets? It's somebody's pride and joy. It's not something they own. I think perhaps there's maybe a misconception. I don't know. But in commercial aviation, if there's damage to an aircraft, they'll fix it. Good as new, no problem. Keep operating it. Is it fair to say maybe that's where it would differ? I'll stick with you on that one, Youcef. If that's
Exactly. I mean, it's as you said, it's a sentimental thing. Even though, say for example, you have the aircraft, it's had a repair and it still, it appears fine. In the exterior, it's nice, but you still have a stigma which is attached with that aircraft that it's been involved in an incident. It's hit a bus or it's hit another aircraft whilst it was taxiing, and yeah, I mean, especially if you're a ultra high net worth individual, you don't really want to have an aircraft that has that sort of history behind it.
Unfortunately, I'm not an ultra high net worth individual, but I certainly wouldn't.
Not yet.
Not yet, but maybe if corporate jet investor pay a bit more, we'll do that. But it's but I certainly was going to say I wouldn't buy a car if I'd known it had been in an accident, no matter how good the repair job was. So I think the same applies here. Richard, anything else to add? So we're talking about diminution of value here.
Yeah, so diminution, after COVID, it didn't matter whether the plane had some of this history. So I look at diminution as an economic consequence. When you couldn't get any planes because the OEMs were 3 or 4 years out, then everybody wanted a plane, right? As COVID, they wanted a yacht and an airplane. So there less significance. When there's a bunch of them on the market, probably the high net worth individual is going to want one without the pedigree or without the 337s and the damage history and the like. So,
can I just add a final bit on that one, if that's okay, Graham? So it's an actual example.
I think you've cut out there. Hello?
testing.
Can you maybe share that, Michael?
Hello?
Yep.
Cool. So during COVID, I had to do an appraisal on an aircraft. I won't say the aircraft type, but it was an aircraft type which at the time was in high demand, and it was at a time when the market was extremely hot, and I was asked to do an appraisal on this aircraft that had damage history, and at the time there were only 2 aircraft available for sale. It was that specific aircraft that I had been asked to do an appraisal, and the second aircraft that was available was in Russia, so that automatically stripped your opportunity to get access to that aircraft. So you were left with an aircraft that had damage history. So your options, they went down basically, and if you were interested in that aircraft, you only had that option. So it is all to do with how the market is. Mm-hmm. If you're operating in the market where you've got 30 aircraft, of course, just as humans, we will always go down the cherry picking route, right? And say, okay, well, if I can get 30 aircraft which are fine, I'll leave that one that has damage history, or I'll get the one that has the damage history, but I will pay a significantly lower price.
Okay, now that makes sense. Thank you. I'd like to move on a little bit to the specifics of valuing aircraft in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, we've got a couple of slides. So I'm hoping, there we go. Right, I might ask the gentlemen to crane their necks in, or maybe I'll summarise. I should add at the outset, the source for this is an independent source, it's JetNet. So thank you to them for this data and the one on the next slide. This is business aircraft currently located, I should stress, in the Kingdom. This isn't registered aircraft, this is currently located, so there would be some difference there. So it wouldn't take into account a Saudi aircraft located outside the Kingdom at the moment. But in brief summary, a lot of King Airs, the most popular type, a lot of Gulfstream G450s, Gulfstream in summary of all types, are the largest OEM here, followed by King Air. Quite a lot of Boeings overall, 24. Is that roughly what you'd expect to see in a jurisdiction like Saudi Arabia? Richard, maybe?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've seen around here. There's also a fair number of helicopters. I think the Sikorsky's and Leonardo has most. So there's quite an abundance, and I think it's a booming market. I've been chasing Al for years to come over here because I think it's going to be a vibrant market. I'll be back here next year. Next, I'll chase Iceland. I think Iceland's perfect. There's more volcanoes than there are airplanes, but anyway, so yeah, this is what I would expect to see.
I would certainly, on the helicopters, I would concur for that. Certainly the amount of business, and it's a small sample, but the amount of business we see, I'd probably do as much helicopters at least in terms of, or as many as we do business jets. Youcef, that's a fair reflection of what you'd expect to see?
I think so, yeah. I mean, that is how the market is. There's always been a stronger preference for that upper end side of aircraft. And obviously the last panel that we had on, they spoke about the VVIP aircraft.
We'll touch on that in a minute, actually. It's something I'm keen to pick up on. Just and by sector, and that's borne out. So almost 50% of the aircraft listed there are in the large, ultra long range capacity. Would you see that changing in terms of what you're appraising over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years? Would you expect any of those particular?
I fully expect it'll increase on the large cabin.
To keep going. Okay. We'll move on to the large cabins, the VVIP aircraft. I'm going to start with the very big aircraft. I'm thinking about aircraft which are in commercial operation, which have a business jet application. So at the very top end, that maybe could be an A350 or Boeing 787, for example. As appraisers, if a royal... Hello? If a royal flight operation or an ultra-high net worth individual came to you asking you to appraise an A350, how would you look at that differently from an airline, from Riyadh Air or Saudia coming to you with the same underlying aircraft type? Maybe Richard, I'll start with you on that one.
So on those sort of presidential fleets or whatever.
Yes, normally 1s and 2s perhaps, as opposed to the 20 and 30 you might have.
All the avionics, you've got to, when those things, if they go into resale, all that stuff gets ripped out because it's sensitive where they were flying. All of that, I've done some work with the planes out of the 747s out of Japan and the like. And so there's not much value in those interiors and some of the avionics. So if I'm appraising it for in continued use, then I'd consider all of the costs associated with those.
So the cost
build out,
the cost of taking equipment out, putting it into a different level of service. What about Youcef? Anything to add on that? We'll touch on interiors in a moment. By the way, I know that was a question that's sort of half got posed in the VVIP section just now, but.
Yeah, so obviously I won't go into interiors for now. I would say, so if you are appraising a commercial versus a VVIP aircraft, naturally the utilization profile is going to be very different. So you will expect the hours and cycles especially on the engines, they will be a lot higher on a commercial aircraft. So in a way, you will have more value in the engines of the VVIP aircraft in itself because of its hours. However, I would say, yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same if it's operating for corporate or for VVIP, but another thing that you have to take into consideration, especially for aircraft which are operating in Saudi, is obviously the environment, right?
Yep.
It's operating in a harsh environment, in a sandy environment. So, I mean, we've seen it with the E170s, right? The E170s, the E170s with Saudi. I mean, they kind of had to get phased out because the time on wing, the intervals were just not getting there, basically. And I think it is a consideration. Yeah, it's a special.
I think a lot of the commercial aircraft have known issues which are causing problems. Powder coating issues on engines and the like have actually sort of contributed to bankruptcies in certain jurisdictions, such as India. Would that be less of a consideration, given as Youcef says that the business aircraft tend to be operating less? Would that be less of a consideration when valuing a business aircraft, because these problems will likely manifest themselves far later in the life cycle of a...
Yeah, chances are the engines never come off.
Yeah.
On those airplanes there, because they're not like a Southwest Airlines where they're flying 8-9 times a day. They're maybe flying once or twice a week or whatever, unless it's in a charter configuration. So those engines stay on, and I think the OEMs are adjusting their equipment for these harsh environments. They're beginning to add certain remediation to the engines.
I mean, there's certainly plans in place to sort of fix engines, and hopefully, as you go through cycles, these things will resolve themselves. But it takes time; it's not an overnight fix. Youcef, sorry, you look close.
Yeah, and I think on that it's important, again, if it's operating in that sort of environment, that you are storing you are hangering the aircraft, because obviously if they're out there in the out exposed to the elements, that's not great, especially if they're not operating in a very continuous kind of cycle, right? So I think that's important. But also in terms of the engines, not so much obviously on ACJs and BBJs, but I'm talking about on your globals, on your G650s, etc. I think it's very important, especially here, that your engines are enrolled on a program, because that gives you the peace of mind that those engines they are covered. And obviously that will depend on the type of coverage, right? But
yeah, there's programs and there's programs, different levels, etc. Yeah. We'll come on to programs actually after interiors. Then we've run out of topics. But one thing I will ask is before we leave valuing aircraft, business aircraft. Certainly in the commercial space, and Richard touched upon this, Southwest Airlines are offering hundreds of each individual type. There's lots and lots of data points you can base you know how much aircraft have been bought and sold for. Sometimes in business jets, you get especially the larger aircraft, you get very few trading points to actually base your value from. You can't say he paid this much, so you should be looking to pay the same. Richard, how do you sort of overcome that? If you get a very rare aircraft type which is barely traded over a period of time, how would you sort of help an investor or an owner come up with a value for?
I think most of the corporate jets, there are various databases out there that do sort of track those items. You've got such as Blue Book and VREV, which are sort of high level, where they're getting data from the OEMs on, an asking price or a list price. But there's Aircraft Post, there's Amstat, there's JetNet, various parties. They're all chasing the same thing, which is they're trying to get exact data. So I'm fairly comfortable that in the corporate world, you're getting accurate, most part you're getting accurate data. On the commercial side, the reliance is on, the Boeing is not going to tell you, nor is Southwest going to tell you what they buy a 737 for. That's a very secret number. And
That's
so
the golden ticket.
the reliance, my background was banking, so I would rely on you all's data to value fleets. I would probably never see the airplane. I would just look at the hours, engine times, and that sort of thing to come up with numbers. In the corporate world, you're mainly going out and inspecting the plane. I like to think of it as if I know what the purchase price was and I marry the pre-buy, then I might have the perfect comp, unless there was an inside deal. Somebody sold it, some sort of deal, or they wanted to get rid of it, or it had
something
hair.
else,
Yeah.
with their yacht as well. But I think certainly on the commercial side, yeah, we do sometimes see the purchase price. It's privileged information. You've got to be careful how you use it. But to summarise, in the business world, there's certainly enough data for most types to for you to be comfortable. So,
Yeah, generally. The BBJs and the ACJs, there's a little less data
yeah.
on those things, but there is some,
The bigger they get, maybe the less data.
well, there not so many of them.
Okay, makes sense. Let's just in the interest of time, let's move on. We talked about interiors. There was a question to the previous panel about VVIP interiors. Certainly, having sat on a number of calls, and I'll take notes and feed this back to IBA's appraisers when I get back, so get your thoughts on this. We often get asked, how did you? I spent a fortune on my interior, the fixtures, the furniture, the furnishings. How did you take that into account in the appraisal? And sometimes we don't. I think that's fair to say. One man's interior probably won't be taken by the next owner of the aircraft. It's ripped out. You start again. Nevertheless, people have spent a lot. I mean, do you take that? Is there any way you can take that into account? And if so, how? Youcef, maybe I'll flip to you on that one.
Sure, I think a very important thing, in appraisals, right, is this whole thing of, and it's important that we educate our audience, right, in that the cost is not always value, right? Yeah. You can't say, oh well, I spent X amount on this, so therefore the value of the aircraft is that, and then plus the amount you spent, because ultimately, especially if you're deriving the market value, right, that is what you would sell that aircraft in an open market to, to what the market wants to pay for it, right? And especially if it comes down to an interior, right, where on a smaller aircraft, how custom an interior gets is tight. On a larger aircraft, you can end up with an aircraft with showers, with beds, with a Majlis, in this part of the world.
Yep.
And you kind of have to think about, okay, if you had to sell that aircraft, or you had to repossess that aircraft, right? How easy is it to sell in its current form, in its current interior? And it's the same thing with a G650 or whatever, right? If you have an aircraft and its interior it's pink and it's polka dots everywhere, it's hard, it's hard to sell. So either you basically have a few options, right? Option one is you wait for a long time until you find another person that they want exactly that same interior.
Unlikely.
Yeah, and you have to wait. So that aircraft is going to depreciate. It's going to get older. Its value is going to go down until you wait. Option B is you go and you strip out that interior. You put something back in. You kind of have to think how feasible it is, especially if it's older. Yeah, especially if the aircraft's older. If it's older and you have to put an interior, you kind of have to think it's not worth it. And then option C is you kind of just have to take a reality hit and say, okay, it has a weird interior, a bit of a niche interior. I'm accepting I have to sell it at, a discounted price,
Okay.
and that's the reality.
Richard, anything to add on interiors?
I think it becomes a credit decision within the bank. Maybe it's a high net worth individual and they got a fancy exterior paint job, what have you. And you're probably going to give serious consideration to all the cost. If it comes out into the market, the next buyer is probably going to tear everything out and repaint it, unless it's a charter operator or somebody who can live with it. And that may be a determination. Whoever hires you may say, well, we're going to
This is a fairly
attempt to
fungible
sell
asset.
this,
It's fairly, okay.
into that marketplace. What's the value? So.
Okay, just at that point, I'll just pause. Are there any questions, either from Slido Al or from the floor? So, there is one. Okay, go. Okay, nothing. So we'll keep going. Just one more thing I think we wanted to touch on before wrapping up. You mentioned maintenance programs, or one of you mentioned maintenance programs. There's certainly, first part of the question is, how does being on a maintenance program affect the valuation of your aircraft? And B, maybe you could talk a little bit about the different types of maintenance program. What do they cover? And again, how that would impact on the value of the aircraft. So maybe, Richard, I'll start with you on this one.
So if you take something like Rolls-Royce Corporate Care Enhanced, well, that's sort of the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
So in theory, your engines are always brand new. And you might have tip-to-tail parts, all these different programs. All of that makes the appraiser's life pretty easy. When you get into some of the other lesser contracts, you've got to determine the degree of value, like some of the JSSI contracts may look at something catastrophic, which is, so it's not a full program. So as an appraiser, I'm going to read those contracts and determine where the value proposition is.
So certainly that's something to be aware of when buying an aircraft. You know, it's well and good signing up for a program, but make sure you're signing up for what suits you best.
Yeah, and I listed in the appraisal because I want, as an assumption, they're telling me it's on a program. Mm-hmm. I'm not a forensic accountant. I'm going to tell the bank that they need to memorialize and put that into writing, or their aircraft attorney, they need to be, that it's on those programs. And then if they stop making the payments on the program, that the bank immediately gets notified so that they can take corrective action. And I think we started that at B of A, and then I took it over to Citigroup, and it's in most of the documents today. The minute somebody stops paying on the programs, an alert goes out that maybe there's an issue.
There's an issue. It's certainly a question we you know, when we're scoping out appraisal, or we'll often get asked, just please confirm that the aircraft is registered with a suitable program, and if so, at what level. And it's a fairly easy thing to do, but you know, just to be sure, you need to tick the
Yeah, it might be out of the scope of the appraiser, but not out of the scope of the attorney and the bank.
I'm thinking often when we combine it with an inspection, for example, actually it would be our technical guys rather than the appraiser doing that kind of thing. Youcef, anything on that front?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess for our industry, right, the datum is to have your aircraft engine enrolled on program.
Okay.
If you don't have it enrolled on program, automatically it is a detractor, and then you kind of then have to you then have to approach it from how long left, and you have to overhaul those engines. And I spoke again about the harsh environment, etc. So for example, take a CFM 56 7B26 engine, which is on a 737-800. So if you were to kind of operate that aircraft in a normal environment, you would probably get 20,000 hours, right? Now you operate that aircraft in a harsh environment, you'll probably get somewhere around 13,000 So you're automatically 30% under. And actually, on that topic, I recently attended an interview of a Saudi airline CEO, and he was asked a similar question about how it impacts their fleet, and he said that actually they get 50% less time on wing on their engines compared to a European operator. So I think that just emphasizes the importance to have the engine enrolled in a program, especially in Saudi Arabia. That's peace of mind.
Also on those programs, the OEMs on those programs, they're going to extract a higher price on the program if it's in a harsh environment.
Because it's more likely to be used.
Yeah.
In short.
So
okay. Just one more thing. I think it's one of the topics Youcef, you want to speak about, I think the organizer put in. What are the pitfalls of taking an appraisal, or what are the difficulties for you when what's the missing piece? What makes your life difficult when you're...
For me, I would say is where a person thinks that each aircraft is the same, but every MSN is very specific. Every aircraft has its history and every transaction. So if you got like a data point and a person says, oh, but I heard that X aircraft sold for X amount. Yes, but each aircraft has a history. So it's for us as appraisers to get that data point, and we have to get into the detail. We have to understand, okay, like why did that aircraft sell for that amount? Is it an auction sale? Is it like a distress sale? Then it's up to us to kind of say, okay, it's fine, it sold for that amount, but it is an outlier. It's it's not normal. Also, I think it's assumptions, right? If a person says to us, oh, here's the data, we ask them, okay, especially on a corporate jet, right? Oh, have you got the pictures of the interior? Oh no, sorry, I don't. I only have the MSN, and I want. Okay, cool. But I can give you sort of like a semi-appraisal, but until I see that interior, I don't know, for...
You can't refine it as much as you'd like to.
For all I know, you've got purple carpets everywhere on that aircraft with polka dots and velvet. I don't know, right?
That's how I do my plane, never had one.
Yeah. So I don't know. So it's assumptions. And assumptions can be very dangerous and can cost you a lot of money in the long term, especially if you're an investor where you have, say, obviously in an ideal world, everything goes smooth. We're not in an ideal world yet. Things go wrong. You have to repossess that aircraft. You have to sell that aircraft, and now all of a sudden you kind of find out, oh, I thought it was an average aircraft, and now it's very hard because it's got purple seats. So it's why it kind of reinforces the importance of us appraisers, and yeah, basically.
I thought purple polka dot seats would add to the value of an aircraft, but maybe not. But Richard, anything else from you? What are your biggest?
I think in the U.S. domestic market, there's kind of in the banking industry, there's a shift to doing desktop appraisal. So you're not physically looking at the airplane, and you run into the issues Youcef's brought up here. You get a get out of jail card because you're assuming. When I physically look at it, what I do is I dictate my whole appraisal. So I'm out walking around, and then I'll sit with the operator, and I tell them that I have early Alzheimer's or something since I was 3 months old, and I use this as a memory device. And then I'll say, am I missing anything here?
Okay.
So now it's not evidentiary, but that person feels like they're on the hook. Mm-hmm. So is there anything I'm missing with this particular airplane? I've looked at the records, and usually, they're pretty straightforward. So it's physically looking at something. You can, now I'm not doing a pre-buy, I'm just looking at the plane, mm-hmm. looking at the records. and making some determination about how well it's maintained, its programs and that sort of thing. So physical inspection, while it's a little more expensive and you got to go out and physically look at it, it's probably a better widget, but there is this shift down towards desktops where you lose that.
That's it. And that's the generic value. The desktop value is the generic aircraft almost that Youcef was.
Yeah, and I mean, I always give the example, right? Like, if you were to buy a house, right, and you buy a house, you have to get it inspected and etc., right? And you have to have an appraisal of that house, right? Nobody's going to accept, oh, here's the average house on the average road in this city, because every house is very different. And I just think I mean, if you're dealing with an aircraft, just I want to say, just kind of that you have to invest, and you have to spend, on evaluation to basically just make sure that you are sorted, because because if not, you could end up in very
it's a small
choppy
fee,
waters.
It's a small fee, and all three of our organisations are very reasonable with our fees, but a small fee to save a much bigger fee later potentially.
100%, yeah.
So I think we're close to wrapping up now. Just one final. Any questions from the floor or? Ooh, hold on. So Mr. Anonymous has posed a lot of questions today. His or her latest is: what is the current discount for an aircraft operated intensively in charter companies compared to those of private owner use? So I think you both touched on a charter aircraft being used sort of semi between an airline and a private user. So what's the premium, or do you just more hours? So
yeah, more hours, and again, if it's on if it's on full programs, essentially you've got new engines all the time. Parts, that sort of thing, but still your interiors are getting beat up, that sort of thing. So you have to give some thought to all that.
Okay. I agree. Yeah, same. So it's hours basically. It's hours, and and how much has been used. Yeah.
But is there a bit on the interior there? So something operated by a VistaJet or a similar charter company, there might be someone else might take that because it's a fairly standardised layout, isn't it? But is that might increase the value of it? Or?
Yes.
Again, I think those planes get beat up somewhat. They wouldn't. If there's anybody in the audience from Vista, I don't think they'd want to hear that. But
there are other companies available.
Yeah, they get some. They've got some usage, and those are high-hour planes and the like, and so there is a discount there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's easy to say how much is the discount, because it's okay. Perhaps
case by case, yeah.
Perhaps you've got hours, right? Mm-hmm. But you've got that aircraft which is high time aircraft, but it's had a fresh interior. Then you kind of it's a reset again. The issue in terms of hours is more, especially if the engines are not enrolled on program, and then you have to think, okay, how much now is the buy-in fee to get those engines back onto a program, or to do an overhaul. I think that's where the issue is.
Fantastic. I think at that point we'll wrap up. I'd like to thank Youcef and Richard. Thank you for some fantastic content. Thank you to Alistair, Louisa and the Corporate Jet Investor team for having us here. And happy to pick up with anybody afterwards if required. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.